All right, so we're talking about ways to find good deals in our crazy market. And some of those ways involve, I guess you'd call them contrarian strategies, basically running into the building or running into the market when a lot of people are bailing for the exits. And specifically, I'm talking about looking to buy at a time when the stock market is tanking or when interest rates are spiking. So let's talk about the stock market first. Our market, more than most markets in the country, I don't want to say it's linked to the stock market or certainly that there's causation, but there is some soft correlation between the stock, what you see in the stock market, particularly the FANG stocks, the tech stocks, and what you see happening in the housing market. And there's one big reason for this. There's a few reasons, but one big one, which is prices are so high in our market that by extension, down payments are very high. And particularly when the market is very competitive, you'll see people will raise their down payment, not just do a 20% down payment, but sometimes 40 or 50% down payment to convey security, to convey confidence, and hopefully to cut through the noise in a multiple offer situation. You know, they'll say, hey, you should pick our offer. We're putting 50% down. Don't take this person putting 20% down. We're putting 50% down. So if the house appraises a little low, no big deal. Here's the thing. When the market is tanking, particularly when the tech stocks are tanking, a lot of folks in our market don't necessarily have hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars liquid sitting in a bank account. What they often have if they're putting a large down payment down is some combination of maybe a few $100,000 sitting in the bank account, but also a lot of money in stock, typically company stock, and some money in their retirement accounts. So of course, when the market is way down, particularly when the type of stocks that they're holding are way down, they're going to be more reticent to cash in those stocks at that time, potentially at a loss or at a smaller gain than they had thought they had just a few months before, to use to roll that money into a down payment. Here's the thing. If you're a buyer for who that's not a problem, perhaps you have the money in the bank and you don't need to sell stock, this is a great time to buy a house. It's something we saw near the end of 2018. So the previous peak of our market was March, April 2018. That at that time was the all-time high in prices. But come the summer, that really plateaued, and by the fall, the bottom fell out, and we had about anywhere between an 8 to 10% correction, depending on micro market, depending on city, but depending on neighborhood. Part of the big reason, there was really two big reasons. We'll talk about the second here in just a second, but one of those two reasons was the stock market, particularly the tech stocks, when the Fed started tapering in late 2018, that really spooked the tech stocks. And a lot of buyers got scared and bailed out of the real estate market. So the second thing, in addition, second time that you may be wanting to look at actually running into the market when other people are running out is when mortgage rates are spiking. Now, they haven't really spiked here in a couple years. Some would argue it's not necessarily possible for the Fed to raise rates too much at this point, because how are they going to service the national debt given how large it's grown? But the fact is, again, if you look back to the period we were just talking about, late 2018, rates went up a good bit. So 30-year rates were around 4.5% then, when they had been much lower, in the months and years before. And that scared a lot of people out of the market. A contrarian would argue that, hey, that's the time when people are getting scared out of the market, even if you need to finance. If you're not a cash buyer and you're looking at a 4.5% rate now instead of a 3% rate, or a 3.25%, 3.5% rate, simply you're still looking at most likely getting a better deal, even though your monthly payment may be a little higher, the interest portion of the monthly payment. There's going to be less competition in the market in times like that. So we saw both of these factors, both the stock market going down and interest rates going up. We saw them converge in late 2018. And we saw a lot of buyers across the market press pause. So what we're seeing right now, where there's a real imbalance in leverage, where all the leverage, or at least the majority of the leverage, is in the hands of sellers. They can do things like say, hey, you know what? I want a 30 or a 60-day rent back. I know there's so many people that want to buy my home. I have the market cornered, so not only are you going to buy my home, but you're going to let me stay in it free of charge for 30 or 60 days after close of escrow, after the moment when you actually become the legal owner of the home. Those things don't really happen in markets like we saw in the second half of 2018. In fact, a lot of that leverage went back to buyers. We had a number of buyers who got homes with just 5 or 10% down, which is almost unheard of in the current market unless you're a VA buyer. We had, buyers with just weaker financial situations. We had buyers who were able to get houses with inspection contingencies, with loan contingencies, with appraisal contingencies, simply because sellers didn't have many, if any, other options. So in times like this, where the stock market is going down, when interest rates are spiking, you have a much better chance of being the only offer. And if you're the only offer, you have much more pricing power than if there's a handful of offers that the seller can basically bid up. So every one of those people that we talked about, that I just mentioned, who bought a house in the second half, particularly the late third, fourth quarter of 2018, they're looking like Nostradamus now. They may have bought a house with 5 or 10% down, but simply because of subsequent appreciation, they've got 30, 40% equity in the house. They've all been able to refi into much, much lower interest rates, and they got the house at 6 figures less than they would have got it, just a few months before or a few months after. So again, I'm not saying these strategies are not without risk, but what Warren Buffett said, be greedy when others are fearful, and fearful when others are greedy. In this case, it definitely worked out. So hopefully you found this useful. If you did, please like and subscribe, and we'll continue to pump out videos like this with some other ways to find good deals in our crazy market. Thanks so much.